Sometimes you play modern games and think, what's this? Why is it so repetitive and doesn't offer anything new? Then you're surprised to find out that there are games that came before them years ago and were much bolder, smarter, and more fun. Today I'm bringing you 16 old games that are still better than many modern ones. Innovative ideas, respectable level design, engaging stories, and expertly crafted gameplay without filler or empty marketing. Just because they're old doesn't mean they're outdated. On the contrary, if you play these games, you'll understand why people say there was literally soul back then.
I'm a realist, but this game has me completely hooked. Vampyr. It's not just a typical vampire-themed action game. It asks you, if you were a real vampire, how would you live? You play as Jonathan Reed, a doctor in London in 1918 amidst a deadly plague, and suddenly you discover you've become a predator. This is where the dilemma begins, the one that keeps you going. Do you continue treating people and fighting your hunger, or do you give in and start eating them to gain strength? I think it's a clever twist that leaves you torn between your humanity and becoming a werewolf, a truly perplexing feeling. But the strongest idea in Vampyr is that power is linked to morality. Every character in the city has a name, a story, and relationships, and if you decide to embrace them and kill them, you're not just gaining XP, you're changing the entire neighborhood. The atmosphere is excellent. Foggy streets, dim lighting, melancholic music, and London feels sick and tense. The gameplay has some cool combat ideas with its blood and evasive abilities, but I have to be honest, the fighting can sometimes be heavy-handed and repetitive. However, if you enjoy gray areas, situations where you're haunted by a decision, and a genuinely gloomy vampire atmosphere, Vampyr is worth a try.
Resident Evil 7. Oh yes, Capcom, when they took that risk and literally won, they took the series to another level with Resident Evil 7. This installment doesn't throw you a familiar hero like Leon, Jill, or Claire. No, it throws you with Ethan Winters, a rocky kid who doesn't understand anything, reminiscent of Leon in Resident Evil 2, but here Ethan is just searching for his wife, Mia. And this decision is genius because you feel like you and Ethan are on the same level of fear and ignorance. Every door you open feels like a mistake. The first-person perspective makes you feel closer to the horror than in any previous installment. The Baker family home isn't a game setting, it's a trap. Narrow corridors, creaking wood, dampness, and darkness that makes you suspicious of every sound. And the horror here isn't cheap junk, it's slow-burning tension and psychological suffocation, especially in the first few hours when your resources are limited and you know that direct confrontation is probably a bad idea. The gameplay goes back to the series' roots, managing ammunition, collecting keys, solving puzzles, and making survival decisions. And the monsters? They're disgusting and terrifying, but what really gets is the feeling that you're surrounded by deranged people, not just zombies. Resident Evil 7 was a stroke of genius, an unforgettable experience. Literally ahead of its time. In my opinion, it's even better than The Village.
Watch Dogs 2. Look, after the recent rumors that the Watch Dogs series is officially over for Ubisoft, which is sad, but let's talk about the one game that truly had soul and character. Watch Dogs 2. This game took the hacker concept and made it fun instead of dreary and heavy, giving you a colorful and vibrant San Francisco that feels like a real city, not just a map. You play as Marcus and the DedSec team, and while the story might not be the deepest, it fits the mood, facing huge corporations, surveillance, data, and how your whole life can be bought and exploited. The great thing is that the game doesn't force you into one style. You can complete entire missions without firing a shot, hack cameras, create distractions, open doors remotely, or use a drone and RC car to complete the mission while you're actually outside the area. This gives you the feeling of outsmarting the system rather than relying on brute force. Getting around is fun, with light parkour, bikes, cars, and the city is full of activities.
It's true that some side quests are repetitive and the dialogue sometimes feels overly juvenile, but as a bundle of free-roaming gameplay and diverse hacking ideas, Watch Dogs 2 was the best the series has ever offered. If it truly ended, it's a sad ending, because this installment deserved to be built upon much more.
Ryse, Son of Rome. Look, this game was also wronged by Microsoft because it had powerful potential ahead of its time. Ryse. Many treated it as a launch title just because it looks good, and over time it faded away, which is unfortunate because if you play it today, you'll ask yourself, is it possible that a game from 2013 is this good? The facial expressions, the armor details, the lighting on wet steel, it all still impresses. You play as Marius Titus, a Roman soldier living a story of revenge and honor in the style of an epic film. The first landing on the beach makes you feel like you're in a real battle. Mud, arrows whizzing past you, and screams filling the air. The combat itself has a deliberate, heavy rhythm. Block, dodge, then execute. Yes, there's a bit of QTE, quick timeout, and some people found it repetitive, and I understand, but when you get the timing right and see the weight of the strike in the execution, you feel a strange pleasure. The most beautiful moments in the game are when you lead the battalion and crawl under a hail of arrows. Here, you feel like a leader, not just a soldier. Honestly, if they had given it a sequel with a bigger budget and development, it could have become a huge franchise. Ryse deserved so much more.
Shadow of the Colossus? Look, games like this are strange at first, and you find yourself thinking, what am I doing with these giants? Shadow of the Colossus doesn't start with clues or side quests. It begins with silence and emptiness, making you feel like you're alone in a desolate world. Just you and your horse, and vast plains that seem to be saying, walk and search. The game's premise is simple. Defeat 16 giants to rescue a loved one, but the execution is genius. Each giant isn't just a boss, it's a living enigma. You observe it, search for its weak point, climb its body like you're climbing a moving mountain while it shakes you and tries to throw you off. The first time I got attached to a giant, my hands were sweating because the camera and movement felt rebellious, but once you find the rhythm, you realize that the tension is part of the experience. The hardest part? After you kill a giant, there's no celebration or trophies, just silence and a strange feeling of guilt that makes you wonder, is what I'm doing right? This game is unlike any other. Few words, many emotions, and it leaves a lasting impression, as if you lived legend yourself. And believe me, experiencing it is better than many games that seem similar.
Red Dead Redemption. Okay, let's return to the era of cowboys and the American West, but with a game that offers a pure experience of this period. Red Dead Redemption 1. Although the second installment is technically impressive, something about the first one sticks in a different way. A bleak and lonely atmosphere, as if you're playing the last days of the West as it slowly dies. You play as John Marston, a man trying to bring his family back at any cost. His mission seems simple on paper, but it turns into a journey full of contradictions, law and chaos, honor and self-interest, and an ending that feels like an inevitable fate. The story is cleverly written and makes you connect with John because he's a troubled human being, not a superhero. The atmosphere here is magical. Sunsets over the desert, the sounds of the wind, small towns that feel poor and tense, and when you reach Mexico and the music suddenly comes in, one of the best moments in gaming. The world is open but balanced. Random encounters, ambushes, people who need help, and sometimes just riding a horse on a long road gives you a tranquility you don't find in many other games. The gameplay is fun and straightforward. Satisfying shooting and the dead eye feature makes you feel like a legend in duels. While the controls might seem dated, the overall experience remains strong.
God of War 3. But to be honest with you, I prefer the angry Kratos to the wise Kratos. And with God of War 3, man, the game has reached an unprecedented level of gore. From the very first minute, you're immersed in a war of epic proportions.
titans, gods, and scenes that feel smaller than the screen itself. There's no long build-up or lull. The game tells you, take full force. The combat here is pure action, fast-paced, brutal, and combos feel like they're second nature. Blades dance with your movements, and the magic and weapons you unlock only increase the madness instead of being repetitive. Every strike has weight, and every execution elicits a forced oof, because the game doesn't shy away from being brutal. And the strongest point? The bosses. This isn't just boss after boss. Each encounter is a cinematic event with a different concept. Gods the size of buildings, scenes that change during combat, and a constant escalation that makes you feel like you're inside a Greek epic being shattered before your eyes. Even the puzzles are well balanced. They keep you on your toes without killing the excitement. God of War 3 is the pinnacle of the classic series. Fury, blood, and majesty, from beginning to end. It puts more recent games on the back foot. But I love the modern duo, God of War 2018 and Ragnarok, so I wouldn't say it puts them on the back foot. But well, it's definitely more gory and violent.
Assassin's Creed Black Flag. Guys, Black Flag is the game that every time I revisit it confirms that it's still the best pirate game of all time, and the game that literally insults modern games. From the moment you board your ship and hear your crew singing sea shanties and feel the waves crashing against the hull, you know you're about to embark on an adventure like no other. The game offers a freedom that makes you forget about the main missions and spend hours at sea, hunting ships, diving for treasure, and discovering tiny islands by chance. You play as Edward Kenway, a man who didn't start out as a hero or a man of principle. He began as a pirate seeking money and freedom, which makes him one of the most realistic protagonists in the series. You see him gradually change as the story unfolds, instead of being a saint from the beginning. The naval combat here is truly addictive. The timing of the guns, the ship's maneuvering, the firing, then the approach to boarding, every encounter feels like a maritime movie. Black Flag is a game that brings you a feeling of perpetual summer adventure and gives you a sense of freedom that we've missed in many modern open-world games filled with iconic characters. If you haven't played it, you're missing out on a pure pirate experience.
Batman Arkham Knight. Okay. We're talking about a game that if you went back to it in 2026, you'd say, no way! This is a 10-year-old game? Arkham Knight truly is one of the most timeless games. The rain glistening on Batman's suit, the neon reflections on Gotham's streets, the smoke billowing from every corner. Gotham here isn't a city, it's a complete noir mood that makes you feel like you're hovering above a nightmare. The gameplay is top-notch. The free-flow combat system is smooth and intense, and the longer you maintain a combo, the more you feel like you're in complete control of the fight, like a machine. But the greatest pleasure for me is stealth. Hanging above, observing the gang, hearing their fear grow as they lose their composure, then pulling them out one by one from the shadows. This is the most authentic Batman feeling in games. The story is darker and more psychological, playing on Bruce's mind perfectly, and the Joker's hallucinogenic presence adds constant tension and powerful dialogue. Arkham Knight remains the benchmark, and believe me, it will never die despite the passage of time, and it will never be outdated. It literally insults many games that have been released in the last 2 years.
Infamous Second Son. Guys, Infamous is one of those games that I feel disappeared too soon, even though it was a real powerhouse for the PS4 era. The moment you walk through Seattle in the rain, with neon reflecting off the asphalt, you know the atmosphere is part of the fun. The game isn't just about superheroes, it's about a feeling of movement and fluidity that makes you lose track of time. You play as Delsin Rowe, a rebellious young man with a heart. His story might not be the most complex, but his relationship with his brother Reggie gives it human weight. The real fun lies in the powers. You start with Smoke, sneaking and emerging from vents like a ghost, and then you grab Neon, Oh, that's when the smile starts. You transform into a beam of light, hurtling between buildings at a speed that makes you forget about speeding. As you progress, you unlock other powers that add variety, each one changing your fighting style and movement. The combat is fast and fluid, and the upgrades give you a clear sense of advancement. In the graphics, man, there are games coming out in 2026 that won't reach this level. Second Son is a game worth rediscovering, especially if you want a light and exciting experience without complications.
The Order 1886. Let's be agree that the Order 1886 was very unfairly treated. But was it the fault of the critics and players? In my opinion, no, not at all. The biggest reason was the studio itself, when they limited the experience to about 6 hours and sold it for $60. Naturally, people were furious at the time because you felt like you bought the first chapter of a great story and then it was abruptly over. However, what's frustrating is that within this chapter lies a very luxurious game. Technically, it was ahead of its time. The transitions between scenes and gameplay were almost cinematic. The details of the faces, clothing, and lighting in steampunk London are still amazing today. The atmosphere is heavy. Fog, dirty streets, and a gothic feel give the world a strong character. You play as Galahad, a knight fighting threats like werewolves, and the weapon design, especially the thermite rifle, makes you wonder, why didn't we get a sequel? The gameplay is a shooter with a bit of QTE, and it doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it has weight and excellent sound, and the lore clearly needed expansion. The tragedy is that the experience ended before it was fully realized, but believe me, it was an amazing game, ahead of its time in many ways.
Sleeping Dogs. Let's talk about a game that's similar to GTA, but not GTA. I don't know how to explain it, but trust me, Sleeping Dogs is the best GTA-like game ever was. The game puts you in Hong Kong in a way that makes you feel the city more than you play it. Night markets, rain glistening the streets, neon reflecting off the ground, and the sounds of people and vendors give you the feel of an old Asian movie. You play as Wei Shen, an undercover cop in the world of the Triads, and this is where the story grabs you because it's about identity and loyalty. The deeper you go, the more you start wondering, is he still a cop or has he become one of them? There are powerful, dramatic moments that make you care about the characters instead of just finishing missions. The combat is the star. It's not just shooting, this is intense kung fu, and the environment is part of the battle. Shove an opponent onto an air conditioner, smash their face against a table, or end a fight with a brutal move that makes you say, "Ooh, yes." The driving is both fun and fast-paced, and the chases through narrow alleyways feel like a scene from John Wick. Sleeping Dogs is an underrated game that deserves at least one try.
Look, I know this sounds a bit strange. You control flying chairs in the environment around you, haha. But Control is one of those games that once you get into it, you can't get out. You play as Jesse Faden and enter the oldest house, a seemingly ordinary government building. Then you discover it's a living, changing entity that deceives you, like walking through a terrifying bureaucratic nightmare. The real fun begins when you unlock your abilities. You can pull a table off the floor and hurl it at an enemy, rip a piece of concrete from a wall and fire it like a bullet, and every room after a fight looks like it's been through a tornado. Broken glass, flying papers, shattered desks. This destruction isn't just effects. The physics are part of the fun, making you feel like you actually possess superhuman strength. This service weapon changes shape so you can customize your style with speed, accuracy, and power, and with mods you can significantly improve your abilities. The story is mysterious, full of secret files and recordings, and the more you read, the more immersed you become in Remedy's strange world. Control is a worthwhile experience.
Rise of the Tomb Raider. This is the installment where I felt Lara Croft truly transform from a survivor into an explorer. The game plunges you into a harsh Siberian environment. Snow, cold, and isolation make you feel like nature itself is the enemy. The first few hours give you a real sense of survival, and then it opens up a world full of secrets, tombs, and hidden places that beckon you, come and discover.
The gameplay is perfectly balanced. You can play stealthily as a quiet hunter, jump into action, or focus on exploration. The crafting system is simple yet addictive. Gather resources, upgrade your bow and weapons, and choose skills that change your playstyle. The best part is the Metroidvania-esque design of the areas. You unlock a new item, return to an old area, and say, "Aha, now I can get here." But let's talk about what makes Ryse special: the tombs. Respectable puzzles, massive engineering, and a genuine sense of discovery. Not just a room with a box, Ryse is a polished game, packed with worthwhile content, and arguably the best balance in the reboot trilogy.
Skyrim. If you asked me if there's a game that humiliates modern games, I'd proudly say yes, Skyrim. Not for its stunning graphics or legendary gameplay, no, we're talking about the feeling, the atmosphere, the story, the world. You're not playing, you're living in Skyrim. From the moment you step outside and see the mountains and the fog and hear the music, you feel like you're in a place steeped in history, even if you haven't read a single word. You walk down a path and encounter a random incident, a dragon suddenly appears, or a small cave steals 2 hours of your time because you decided to just see what's inside. The game doesn't hold your hand, it gives you direction and lets you wander, and in this wandering, memories are born. And the winter atmosphere here is a story in itself. White roads, whistling winds, cities like Windhelm with their harsh cold, and the Winterhold Mountains where you feel the cold is the enemy. Even riding a horse through the snow gives you a sense of isolation that makes the world seem bigger than it actually is. The main story may be simple compared to the faction missions, but Skyrim's strength is that every player creates their own story. Despite that, Skyrim still draws you back because the world in it welcomes you like an old house.
The Witcher 3. I love games that throw you into a fantasy world and tell you, do whatever you want. I won't confine you to boring dialogue or a silly plot. No, The Witcher 3 is nothing like that. It's much bigger. This is a game that respects your intelligence, building a world where you feel every village has a history, and every possible path leads to a story that will stay with you for days. You play as Geralt, a weary monster hunter, but his true strength isn't his sword, it's his experience. The game's magic, even side quests, can be more compelling than the main storylines of entire games. The world is alive. War, poverty, corruption, and ancient legends seep from the forests and swamps. Novigrad is a vibrant city, while Skellige has a cold, harsh temperament, as if the wind itself is speaking. Yes, combat might not be very appealing to some and requires getting used to, but it becomes enjoyable once you understand the signs, oils, and potions and enter battle fully prepared. The Witcher 3 is a mature, big, soul-filled experience, and it's very difficult to go back to an empty open world after it.